Hi, so my name is Gabriella, and I'll be asking you the first question, which is why did you choose your field of study?
Thanks, Gabriella. That's a very good question. So I didn't choose computing as my first field of study at the undergraduate level. I was initially planning to do medicine from sixth form, so classic slate of math, bio, chem. But after I finished those exams, I realized that medicine was not for me. And at the time, my friends and family were sort of edging me towards computer science because, again, that was the hot new thing around then. It seemed very interesting to me looking at how they use these machines to do all sorts of things. My friends did computing at, I believe it was O level. So I was always curious about what they were learning whilst I was doing Spanish. I was happy, but it was still quite nice to see. Unfortunate that they clash these subjects. I hope they still don't do these things. Um, and then my cousin would play a lot of video games. He would do things on the command prompt, and it looked all very important and interesting. So I said, let's try this. Um, so at my undergraduate level, I did computing and mathematics, which are really, really well complemented towards each other. And then after that, I wanted to do an advanced degree. So initially, the choice for doing medicine was to be able to help people. And when you're doing an advanced degree, usually you have a research problem or some area that you focus on. And again, I was leaning back towards medicine, but that didn't work out. And I was able to, I was able to get exposed to artificial intelligence applied to education. From there, completed a master's degree focused towards recommender systems, how to use content for students to, adapt what they need to know. After that, I eventually ended up in speech-related technologies related to education. So the things that we're doing are very multidisciplinary. It touches psychology, cultural computing, ethnography, linguistics, you name it, right? We pretty much have all of it in there, rolled up in AI, rolled up in machine learning, rolled up in all of the classical foundational theories of computer science. But at the same time, it's touchable work, right? So it's the same core that I had from the beginning. I wanted to do something to help people. And as a result of that, I was able to see, well, tech can touch so many different ways.
Good morning. My name is Healy, and this is the second question. Do you have any advice and words of wisdom for the upcoming aspiring women in the field?
Yes, I probably have three things I can see. So the first one is once you are getting into this field of computing, always go back to the foundational theory and concepts behind anything that you're interested in. Reason being, the field moves so very quickly. It's nearly impossible to keep on top of the emerging technologies. You're gonna become frustrated, you're gonna get really down. So what you should do is always go back to those starting points. Do some research, do some reading, delve into the history of any algorithm, any data science, data store, any type of concept that you're interested in. Reason being, once you understand that core um, quality of something, it tends to repeat itself in new technologies. So a common gripe we often have from students is, why am I learning this old language? Goodness gracious. Is this what you were taught? I had that same complaint, but I was fortunate where when I started my degree, there was a disruptive technology that changed some of those procedural languages, so some of those established things in computer science. So I was okay in that sense that I got, that curve. But when you are learning, it's very, very important to make sure that you have the skills and I like to say muscle memory for things. So then 5 years, well, the way things going, 2, 3 years now, down the line, when something brand new comes out and you are, a little bit unsure, a little bit not too confident about it, if you spend enough time, you're going to see, hey, this thing links back to what I learned in my first year. So just be patient with it. It takes time, but all of this foundational knowledge is super important, and those things don't change. very quickly. Those things stay stable for decades. The things that change are those flashy brand new toys that people tend to say, oh, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So go back to those foundations, right? It's super important and it's really helpful for building your confidence. Now, the second thing I would say is always opt for something multidisciplinary. Why? Because that is where the richness in anything that we use lies, basically. So then if there's something that you're fascinated with, fashion, languages, history, law, whatever you like, try to pair that with something that is core computer science related, because then you're setting up yourself in a pretty cool niche area that can set you apart from everybody else. And it also opens up your mind in a way that you start to apply technologies in very new, very cool, interesting, very weird, sometimes sometimes strange ways, but it works out in the end, I can tell you that. So when I started my research degree, I was doing cultural computing. So that was super weird, right? Because most people were doing very classical computer sciencey things. But now if you look at it, culture is splashed everywhere. Why? Because we have so many people across the world trying to use technology, and there's a cultural influence underlying that usage that gets mismatched. So they're trying to understand this, they're trying to harness this sort of thing. So that's my second bit of advice. And well, the third thing, it goes back to a quote that I often use, which is action cures fear. And many times when women enter these fields, we tend to have a lot of insecurity. Can I make it here? Should I really try for this? Can I succeed when I don't have this thing or that thing? So this is a quote that I read back again when I was doing my graduate work, and it comes from a book called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. When you read it, you might think, yeah, it's a little old-timey because it was written in the late 60s and then republished in the late 80s or so. But it basically means that whenever you want to do something that you're scared of, start with something small, right? Doing some deliberate, helpful action when you're afraid reduces and eventually dissolves the fear of that thing. And this can apply to whatever, right? So whenever you, I don't know, take a break, and this is especially the case for many women, we tend to have a lot of breaks in life, families, health, work related, all sorts of things happen. And when you take a break from the field, it's very hard sometimes to get started again. But again, if you go back to those core things that I told you to stick with, it helps, smooth that transition. And then once you start doing these very, very small things, it feels better, right? So those are my three things really.